Hey everyone, Tactics here. Where in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys a quick refresher on the Vault of the Incarnates right here on normal and heroic difficulty that is returning with Season 4 of Dragonflight, including things like major abilities to be aware of, when tanks should swap, the kind of boss positioning you'll see throughout these encounters, as well as just other things that you need to be aware of that are unique to each boss fight. I'll be doing a similar video like this one for Abberus raid next week as well. Plus, I've got tons more guide content planned for the war within, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And let's start off with Eranog here. Pretty straightforward boss fight. Basically, the main mechanic are these flame rifts that are going to go out here shortly on a few players, and after a few seconds, these erupt and spawn some ads. So we just kind of tank the boss inside this inner ring here, and then those rifts are going to go out, and we just place them behind the boss, and then we're going to continue moving the boss forwards around the room to give more space to drop these rifts, because they're going to see you can drop those puddles there. And, you know, these ads will die, and then we'll just move a little bit more forward to leave space for the next set of rifts to actually drop behind the boss again. Otherwise, there's a stacking dot from the roar here for healers to heal up, and then there's these pillars which spawn these swirly, which you just want to avoid. For tank taunting, on Mythic, the swap is actually these circles. Otherwise, though, it's like 5, 6, 7 stacks. You can taunt swap there of this dot, and just be aware it is a dot, so you'll continue to have it after you've already swapped off as well, and just continue moving the boss like this. For the intermission phase, he just spawns a bunch of ads on the outside. Melee obviously don't want to be in the circle. If the boss health was higher and you needed to survive this phase, you would turn around and all target the same primal flame mob to kill it, to make a hole in the wall, and then you would target the boss here who is not immune right now, and then you would just have this way out. But that's Eranog, and this phase happens at 100 energy, by the way. So pretty simple boss. It is the first boss. Let's move ahead here. We've got Terros. Not too far. There we go. So Terros here is a single target boss. He is stationary. So tanks, you want to make sure that you are always in melee. Otherwise, you know, bad things happen. You know, stationary bosses, you guys know how it is. Basically, this boss is going to fill up the room with these puddles. So there's two ways that they spawn. One is random target swirlies, which I can fast forward here and show you guys. There's going to be swirlies in just a second here. It's going to spawn on random players, and then those swirlies will turn into puddles. Here they are. Just after the shattering impact, spawn some swirlies. Boom. There's puddles. And on top of that, when the boss hits 100 energy as well, he fills the quadrant that you're in fully with these same puddles. So boom, this whole quadrant is going to be gone now. So you just have to rotate around the room. Just pick a direction, either clockwise or counterclockwise, go together, and it kind of limits your time in this encounter. For the actual mechanical stuff outside of that, this soak, you want to always bring it into melee, and then as many people as possibly can get into it and soak it. At the same time, you see all these players with pillars debuffed on them. You want to bring these in and ideally cluster them on one half of the soak. So for us, we said, okay, if you get this debuff, you want to cluster on the left part of the soak here, so they're all going to move over towards the left side to try and group them up together. They line up because these deal pulsing damage, and to get rid of that pulsing damage, the tank needs to hit them with this concussive slam line. It also deals a burst of damage when that happens, so be aware of that. Use defensives for that. It's not a big deal if you can't get them all in one line though, because you do get 2 of these tank lines per spawn of those pillars, so you have some leeway. You can, you know, kill them over 2 slams instead. Otherwise, you can just move this slam out of the group. And on that topic, you taunt off at 2 slams here. Tanks, every 2 slams, you just switch, and it kind of repeats from there. Each phase will have a full cycle of those abilities for each tank to deal with. Otherwise, though, pretty straightforward. And you just keep rotating around the room. It's a bit of a DPS check, just lust on. Pull. Moving on, we have Sennarth, which is a very unique encounter with a massive boss room, which you'll see here. Basically, you're going to be constantly traversing upwards throughout this boss fight, which is pretty cool. It also has a very unique mechanic with some ice. So let's fast forward enough. There we go, boss fight. So basically, there's a few different ways for ice to spawn. The boss shoots them out there, and that's going to target random players and leave ice puddles on the ground. But also, the spider ad, the big one, has a frontal attack that also spawns ice on the ground. So tanks, you want to try and make sure you're pointing that away from your group, because you do slide and you take ticking damage while you're on these puddles, which can be problematic for the grip you're going to see here in 10 seconds. Let me just fast forward. So this is like the main attack in this fight. Targets every single player, and it tries to pull you off the edge of the platform here. So you want to make sure you make some distance. You're running. Being on these puddles can be a death trap for a lot of specs. They don't have like leaps or anything like that, so be careful. So if you have move speed, use it here to run away. The other thing is you see there's these webs which are spawned on random players basically. These will actually hold you during this pull, so you can use those. You can see I walk into it, boom, I don't move at all, and then I get out of it. I did get 2 stacks of this debuff here. You will get frozen in a web at 10 stacks, so be aware of that. But you can clear these stacks with any like movement freeing effects as well, or it can time out if you don't touch any webs in that time frame. Otherwise, a lot of straightforward stuff. There's going to be the spread mechanic and chilling blast, which you just want to make sure you aren't stacked up here. Don't want to murder your friends too much here. And again, you see the boss just constantly moving upwards, all the way up the entire platform. Essentially, there's going to be a couple other platforms, and each platform here will spawn a new set of ads when the boss gets to them. So you're going to get another big ad here, and we can talk about those ads. So basically, these big ads are going to be the prio whenever they're up, because not only are they going to make a ton of these puddles with a freezing breath, they also do ramping damage, just pulsing frost damage that increases over time. So the longer they're alive, the more damage they do. So really want to focus those guys down. Otherwise, you're going to be making your way to the top, which happens at 5% automatically, which I think we auto push here. So we're booking it on to the top. One thing to keep in mind, actually, I think you'll see it here. When you're in P2, so at the top or at 5% health, the swirlies that we spread for, the chilling blast, spawns these mines that knock back. You see knock back players that touch them. So beware of that. You're going to be up here with these usually. So it can be a bit of a pain. Also, there's a few other mechanics which you're probably not going to see here. There's a pushback now. Instead of pulling everyone, trying to pull them off the edge, the boss is now on the ground here and does a pushback instead. So it tries to shove everyone off the platform instead, so don't get shoved off. And then the tank mechanic now webs the tank and a few other players, so you guys just want to group up. And then there's these smaller spiders, which you probably saw earlier. These guys over here, these caustic spiders, on death they create these there it is on death they create these swirlies, and these swirlies will break you out of those webs, and they will also kill these webs on the ground too, so keep that in mind. But something as well, I guess, if you do end up getting 10 stacks of that sticky debuff I was talking about earlier, you can use those on those players that are wrapped in webs, and that'll free them, or you can use immunities as well. But that is Sennarth, so hopefully that helps you guys out. Let's move on here, though. The last boss in this wing is Kurog, and I think I have a separate video for that one, because our Kurog kill, we got like nothing I can really show you guys in terms of how certain mechanics work, because we kind of brute force the boss. But basically, you see here, there's different colorations along the boss room, which are elemental, and the boss is going to get a stacking buff on him. You can see here, based on the side or the elemental area that he's in. This increases his damage while he's in that area. It does pulsing damage. So you basically can't usually stay in one area for like the entire fight kind of deal. You need to kind of move him around a little bit to just reduce that damage intake. The tank mechanic is the same in each zone. So we're going to pull him in here. Here it is. It's just a frontal attack on the tank that knocks back. Also applies a dot. You just swap it one stack. Pretty straightforward here. We can talk about what the different zones do here. So this is Frost. Basically, we have a stack of ranged and we have a stack of melee. And that's because there's a soak ability on this phase. You can fast forward till that happens. Otherwise, you're also just dodging these orbs. Those are the two mechanics, basically. We can get to the soak in just a second here. Here it is. There's the soaks. Basically, one person just goes on the melee stack. One person goes on the ranged stack. You may need to adjust this if you're not too even on melee and ranged. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, just split soaks. You don't want to stack them because you get this debuff here. And on heroic, if you get 2 of these debuffs, you just get frozen solid, which is bad. Keep that in mind. We move here at 50%. You don't have to do this, by the way. And actually, you don't even have to start in ice. I actually kind of recommend you start in fire and you lust on pull, and you stay in fire for as long as you feel comfortable. And then once you start getting to higher stacks, maybe your healers are starting to struggle, then you would move out of fire near the end, hopefully above like 75-80 energy on the boss, just to make your life a little bit easier later on in the fight. But let's talk about the fire zone here. Ideally, I recommend you tank on one side of the actual platform here of the zone for the main ability in this phase in Searing Carnage. We'll get to that in a second, though. Range, you want to be grouped up because there's going to be puddles that spawn on random range players in a second here, you'll see. And because all the range are in one spot, all the puddles are going to guaranteed spawn there. Boom, there they are. They're the puddles. Range move, easy. Here's Searing Carnage. It's going to spawn swirlies on a bunch of players, so you just want to be able to move across the other side of the area here and watch the frontal here. It always comes partway through this Searing Carnage, so be aware of that. Melee can be very, very scary. Gonna fast forward here and show you guys the Earth section, which is an ammunition. We'll go back to that in a second. On the lightning section. Okay, so lightning section, this is a very dangerous section, the one I recommend you go into the least. You can see all these players marked. Basically, these guys that are marked are going to be shooting the person closest to them with ramping damage. And so if you have two people, for example, if this guy was a little bit closer here, this person would be getting shot twice, and that would be very bad. So this is quite dangerous. You kind of need a loosely spread to make sure this is bouncing decently. There's also soaks in this phase, and then circles that you need to get out. So these are the circles you need to get out. Basically, you just don't cleave your friends kind of deal. You don't need to run super far as long as no one's in them. And then you have soaks coming out in a second here. And, you know, like it sounds... Actually, that was them, right? They just kind of are circles all around. They look like that when they're not soaked. And they look like this when they are soaked. Just make sure players get in them. Lots of random damage in this phase. So this is the one I recommend you kind of do as little as possible. So if you stay in fire for like 80 energy on the first one, then you can move into this one for a very low amount of energy and not have to deal with too many mechanics here. Let's talk Earth, though. So enveloping Earth is a debuff. It's a healing absorb, goes on a bunch of random players. So those people need some spot healing. These are the ads that spawn. You can see you want to avoid the swirlies and then pick up the ads tanks. They also have a nasty debuff they apply to the tank as well. So keep that in mind. You might want to misdirect or tricks or things because aggro can be a little problematic here, as you can see. Other than that, there's a ripple pattern around the boss he does. I wonder, here it is, erupting bedrock. Just around the boss, you basically just need to do a little dance, step out of the boss to avoid the initial one, and then step back in, kind of like the third boss in Halls of Infusion. Now, at 100 energy, the boss has an intermission phase where he will spawn 2 elementals here based on the elements he was just part of in the previous phase, the 2 highest elements. So because this was Earth and Lightning, I just showed you guys, he spawns Earth and Lightning here. There's a couple mechanics on each of these guys. So the Earth, you see, it applies this debuff to a bunch of players, and then you drop a puddle when this expires. So this puddle stays for a long time, so you want to try and fill up areas you don't plan on going to again. You see the edges here and the lightning zone, which you don't want to do. This Thundering guy, he teleports to a random healer, and then he starts channeling this lethal current on the closest player, whoever it is, after that teleport. So that player will want to get out of the group because it deals splash damage. Moving back to the previous intermission we did, which had the fire. Oh, perfect. Wow. We have the fire and the ice ad here. Fire guy just spawns more puddles on random areas, random targets. So again, you want to tank this guy in a place that you don't mind filling up with puddles. Frozen guy you saw there, he has a kick. And then he also does AoE damage in a second here, this Freezing Tempest. And you take less damage when you're within this little circle around the mob. So you want to get in under the mob here. Otherwise, you want to just kick these Hellion ads and get them in and cleave them down. Those are just spawned from these puddles there. That's the abilities. In terms of how I recommend you actually handle it, like I said, try and stay in the fire as long as you can at the beginning of phase 1 with Lust and all your CDs, and then you'll shift across towards the lightning area, and then you can step in the lightning area towards the end of that phase, deal with the what's left there with the lower ramping damage. So you'll spawn the fire and the lightning ad initially, and then you can start in the earth phase or the frost phase. It doesn't really matter at that point, and you can just swap to the other at 50 energy, and hopefully by then you'll have the boss low enough that you can actually finish them off. All right, let's shift to the other side of the raid. This is the wrong video now. Let's get out of there. Boom, Kurog's done. Let's go across to Primal Council. Is it? Yeah, okay. So, Primal Council here, 4 bosses, as you can see. Basically, these 2 on the left, they have interrupts. You just want to interrupt them as much as possible. These 2 on the right are the 2 main focuses of the tank. So what you're swapping on is Opalfang's Crush as a physical damage amp. So whenever Opalfang does Crush, you'll swap Opalfang, and you kind of at the same time will just swap Embar. Embar has a tank targeted frontal here in Searing Blaze, also applies a dot, so face these bosses away, and you'll just swap again on the Opalfang thing whenever that happens. Just swap both bosses essentially. There's a bunch of yes, the trolling. Okay, there's a bunch of mechanics on this fight, but tied to together. So there's these debuffs that go out, which will spread to other players you touch. To get rid of them, you can either wait for it to expire, or you can go and touch one of these pillars that instantly gets rid of it. Now, these pillars also do ticking damage to the entire raid while they're up, so you don't necessarily want all of them to be up at once. And so you can get rid of them by having this player here with a Searing Axe have them in the soaks they do. That'll get rid of them. and also it'll spawn a flame puddle. Now this does deal a bit of damage, so you want a few players to get into each of these soaks as well, just so players don't get murdered by the soak damage. You can see they're pretty decent hit, and then the ones that got hit are gone. And now there's a little fire puddle there, and basically what these fire puddles do is when the blizzard starts to happening, it applies a stacking debuff to all players, and if you get to 10 stacks, you are frozen solid. Don't want that to happen, so you can touch that fire puddle to clear your stacks. You can just do this around like 4 to 6 stacks. You can just go in, boom, touch the puddle, stacks are gone, and you are going to get more stacks again, but it's not going to stack all the way up, and you'll be fine. So that's what you do there. And again, maintaining kicks here, keeping these guys faced away, and we're just swapping on Opalfang here constantly. Ideally, what I recommend is you try and, get a pillar that's for melee, and you kind of keep that pillar. Obviously, things got a little chaotic here early on, but basically, and again, you can see here, if we have this pillar clear, people can just spam clear on this one pillar. Obviously, tanks, you kind of don't want to do that kind of heavy movement when you're tanking the bosses, so I'm just going to kind of wait till I can get a safe spot here. Boom. That's nice. But otherwise, if you tank near one and you never get rid of it, it's very easy for melee to clear, just like this, right? Like, we can just constantly clear because we're next to this, and it's not a huge deal that we're spreading it a little bit because we're constantly able to clear. And so we wouldn't want to get rid of this one with the meteor. Actually want to put it like away from this pillar a little bit, because you can see the damage by having 3 of these pillars up is actually not a ton, but having 6, 7, 8 is not ideal, right? So you want to clear some of them, but ideally save one for melee. But in general, it's not a super hard boss, right? Usually most people kill this boss second, so not a big deal either way. We can move up to the next boss here though in Dathea. Oh, too far. Dathea Ascended, previous boss. So there's got some same mechanics from that previous boss. In the marks we saw, there is no pillars to get rid of them, so you just need to stay still with them or stay away from your friends with them and wait for them to actually expire. The tank debuff is like a pretty big knockback. It doesn't start big. It just ramps up each stack of this Zephyr Slam here, makes the knockback bigger and bigger. So in general, around like the 3rd stack is when, a class like a Paladin can't really survive the knockback anymore because it sends you way off the platform. But if you're a demon hunter, if you're a DK, you have charges, things like that, you can actually still survive higher stacks of the knock. But 3 is about where you want to be. There's a couple things to avoid. Obviously, these tornadoes, which you can see they will move around a little bit, and then Dathea will do a big move on them with arrows to indicate where they're shooting. And there's also the cyclone, which pulls players in constantly. This is where you see things like speeds used to avoid this pull in. And if you do get pulled in, it's like a big knock up and back, and as well as some damage. So just be aware of that. It's a little scary. You're going to need to have groups for this boss fight. Depending on tuning, it seems like once you get a bit more gear, you probably only need 1 group for people who are focusing on heroic. If you're, a CE guild doing this on heroic, you probably are fine with a single group. But if you're just getting into heroic and stuff, you probably need 2 groups, and that's to deal with these ads that spawn. So basically you need a tank, a healer, and like 3 to 5 DPS, depending on your group size, to deal with the ads on that platform. And essentially what's going to happen is one platform randomly gets it. You can see by the lightning over here, so I know the ads are going to spawn over there. This guy will spawn, so the tank going onto the platform picks up this ad and drags it towards the platform, and on death, this ad does like a big knockback to all players. So if you're going to the platform, you want to be on the edge, and if you're not going to the platform, you want to be on the other side so you don't get knocked off of this platform. Otherwise, it just has a kick as well, which you want to keep, and they're going to kill all those ads. There's like some interrupts on them. You want to keep them interrupted and use AoE CCs on the small ad, and there's another similar big ad over on that platform, which when you kill can send you back. It's kind of how that works. And again, you can't go there twice back to back because you get a stacking debuff when you're out there. So you will just swap to the second group going if you get a second ad platform, which happens here in like 30 seconds. And when that tank comes back, he would taunt the boss again, and then you would just swap back and forth like that. Okay, just a couple bosses left here. Broodkeeper, here we go. All right, so Broodkeeper. This one, second last boss gets a little bit more complicated here. You're going to want 2 teams. Again, an ad team for the whole first phase, and then a boss team for the whole first phase. Usually, I think the ad team is like, 1 tank, 1 healer, and not a bunch of DPS. You don't need a lot because there's not too many ads that spawn on normal and heroic. So, again, depending on your group size, probably a little bit bigger than your Dathea group, but not too much bigger. And this is where you want to start. So you can see where the boss is here. These eggs is where you want to start here. and you want to rotate around the room clockwise. And the reason for that is the ad spawns are static. So the ads are going to spawn initially to our left a little bit, and then they're going to start spawning over here afterwards. But you want to keep those ads away, I believe it's like 45 yards from the boss. Otherwise, they get like healing and damage done and stuff like that. So it's bad. So by starting here and then rotating clockwise, you avoid the ad spawns, and you're kind of always away from ad spawns as you're busy breaking eggs. Because breaking eggs is the important thing here. You can see the boss has 28 stacks here. That means that 56%, I believe it's 2% per egg, 56% of her health is protected. So as long as there are eggs up, they protect 2% of her health each. So you need to basically, this big staff will go on the ground, and you need to get into that staff, or you have a few players assigned to do it. I'll show you when it does it. But basically, you can use an extra action button when you're near it, and it'll chase you with lightning. And when that lightning hits an egg, it blows them up. As you can see here, they're incubated too. So if you don't blow up these incubated eggs, which are the two closest eggs to the boss when she casts the staff, they will turn into ads as well. So you want to make sure that you always have people assigned to breaking these eggs. You can see Banjo's over here. He's going to break a different egg. So we're going to break 3 eggs per time. Just be careful you don't break too many eggs at once. I think somewhere, 4 is probably fine as well, because you will take ramping damage every time an egg is broken. That's what happens when you miss an egg, by the way. It spawns that dragon, so we're just going to have someone taunt it out, and I'm going to pick it up. Not the end of the world. Again, the egg is still gone, but you want to avoid getting any of these extra dragons whenever possible. And like I said, whenever you kill an egg, it deals a hit of raid damage, which increases with each successive hit within 10 seconds. So you don't want to destroy too many eggs at one time, but doing, 3, 4 eggs is probably fine. 5 is probably a bit much. Maybe with more gear, you can do 5 at once, but I'd stick to within 3 to 4 at once. You can see here, again, I'm rotating this way with the ad group. In terms of what the ads do, this is, let's back up a little bit. Proto Dragons, pulsing damage, and tank bleed. That's what they do. So that's next Stormbringers. These guys are this ionizing charge, which debuffs a few players and causes them to deal splash damage. And then they have a kick, which stuns the tank here, so make sure that gets kicked. And then the next spawn, I believe, is over here. Yes, you can see the spawns with these flame pillars. Again, they're static. So you can see based on our rotation now, they're going to be, again, away from the spawn now because they're clearing all these eggs. And this has the Flame Bender. So this guy spawns these on a random range player. Just want to avoid them. You spin. And he has this cauterizing flash flames buff. You want to purge that off because it does heal other mobs. So purge that if you have one in the ad group. And then Earth Reavers, they have an armor shred on the tank. And they also have a frontal that's a bit weird. It doesn't actually hit in the animation. It shoots projectiles through this animation. You see there? Those are what the actual thing is. The actual frontal animation doesn't do anything. It's just those projectiles that do stuff. So keep that in mind. Mages are like small mobs as well that spawn. They have low health, and they'll just random target cast, so you can kick that as well. I believe that's all the big ads. In terms of other stuff, there's these flames that only target players that are near the boss, so the ad group usually won't get them. You want to, drop those outside of the group or away from each other. Loose spread is easy enough, and that's all you really need to do. And then also there's the Icy Heal Absorb here, which applies to everyone, again, nearby, and it's a magic debuff and a slow at the same time, so you can use Dispels, and you can also use things like Freedom Effects to clear that without actually needing to heal through the full Healing Absorb. Otherwise, though, again, you just basically are running around. There's usually 2 ad spawns back to back, and again, just rotating around the room clockwise and then going towards the center afterwards. You can see that they've been able to stay away from us this whole time, so without many issues of having these mobs be in range of the damage amp and heal on the boss itself. So pretty straightforward there. And then, once you've defeated all the eggs, then you transition to the second phase here. I think we're killing trash. And here, now that you're in the second phase, the Stoneclaw's tank debuff lasts like twice as long or something like that. So now you will actually do a tank swap on the Immortal Stoneclaw's ability. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, for the whole first phase, 1 tank is on the boss and 1 tank is on crash duty, basically, right? And that debuff, it still goes out, but I believe it's less of a healing absorb, and it's for half the duration during the boss phase, so it's not a huge deal. You can survive it. Just use defensives kind of accordingly. Then we have the final boss. We got Raszageth. All right, backing up. Okay, so Few things. I guess tank debuff's coming up here. So it's just a taunt at 1. This debuff has a physical damage amp attached to it. So that's why you taunt at 1. But just be aware, it doesn't expire by the time you're taunting back. So one of the tanks is going to have to eat some autos while they have the physical damage amp on them. So just be aware of that when you're either taunting back or after tank debuff if the other tank is waiting. Do one or the other. I recommend just popping a defensive and taunting when you're doing the taunt off to, last you through the rest of your damage amp. Either really works. The big thing here is going to be the static charges. That'll go out in a few seconds here on 3 players at a time. These will fall off damage to the raid, so you want to spread them out a little bit to reduce that. You can see here just spreading out, but you do want to have one always behind the group here, as you can see. And then either side is fine, because this pushback that's going to be happening here in a few seconds will knock you off the platform if you don't have like really good speed, or if you aren't in one of these. So you can see here the whole raid just kind of positions themselves into one of these. You do want to step into it, by the way. If you don't step into it, you get pushed back a little bit. You can see like that. You'll get stopped by it still, but might get knocked out of your cast or whatever. So it's better to step into it a little bit and then not get knocked back whatsoever, and just kind of stops you. And again, we just repeat that. Drop one behind us, move the others out to reduce the fall off damage. Pretty straightforward. There's also a breath. You saw that you want to avoid lightning strikes, stuff like that you just want to not get hit by. And the other main mechanic here are the sparks, which are coming up in a bit. So you want to spread out. It always happens after this knockback. So you want to use speeds here to kind of spread out. You're going to do splash damage around you. You can do a little bit of stacking. I think we probably overstack here, and you spawn the spark. And basically, this spark is going to do a cast, and if it's successful, it's basically a massive dot on the party. You can probably, on the raid rather, you can probably live 1 dot, but more than that's probably bad. So they have these 2 stacks, and you will need to use some sort of CC, interrupt, or purge to remove a stack. So they only have 1 stack on normal, but they have 2 on heroic, meaning you have to do that 2 times to them to actually get rid of them. So AoE CCs are really good here. Obviously, if you spec into your interrupts, any purges, stuff like that, really good here to just eliminate those entirely, get rid of them, and just make your life easier. And then the boss here will phase at 65%. You need to split into 2 even groups here, 1 on either side to go to these side platforms. There's no special mechanics. They're both the same, so just be an even split. You're killing these ruiners. When you break a ruiner shield, it spawns some ads. These ads need to be picked up. The acolytes need to be kicked, and you can use CCs on these mobs as well. At the same time, there is a breath going off here. The boss alternates sides. The first side is random, so you don't know if it's going to be on this, either side first. And then it alternates from there, so you can see in 4 seconds, the breath wasn't on us, so this one's going to be on us. There's the boss. This is player baited as well, so you can see we baited a little bit, and we can move these ads forward here a little bit. And again, just try and not let too many of these storm bolts go off. It's a more random damage you don't need to worry about. And we're just going to keep rotating here and kill the final ruiner, and then step into this circle at the end. Again, avoiding this breath, you can see it. And then we start phase 2 here. In general, in this phase, you do want to be loosely spread because there's a few different mechanics. The first is, I believe it's happened right off the start. Yeah, Storm Surge. So right off the start here, it's going to debuff every player with one of 2 things. It's either positive or negative, right? So positives are blue, negatives are red. And basically, on heroic, if you touch someone of the opposite color, it deals like an AoE. Meanwhile, if you touch someone of the same color, you get a damage buff to help you break this shield, which will wipe you if you don't break it. So the goal here basically is to have a safe spot for one color and a safe spot for the other color. So for us, we do reds under the boss. So because we're loosely spread, whenever this goes out, reds immediately run under the boss, while blues stay still. We look around, no one near us, and then I will move to my other blue friends here to get the blue damage buff there. And then we just nuke the boss down. You don't need to move after this happens once you've found your friends. And you don't even need to have all the blues in one spot, right? As long as you're with one other person of the same color, you get your damage amp, and then we re-spread out back to our kind of general loose spots. Same tank debuff in this phase. New pushback in this phase in Stormwave. It's not as strong, and it comes out of the boss. So you'll see it in a second here. And you just need to use speed and run right through it. You take damage while you're running through this wave as well. Boom, here it comes. And you just want to run right through it. Fulminating charges are also in this phase, and this debuffs a few players. You're going to see here with big circles, and they're slowed by 75% when this happens. So movement freeing effects to let you to get out to the edge of the room, and then everyone else you want to also move towards the center of the room to avoid this big AoE. It's not a big deal if this spreads to like one other person. You just need to make sure they get spot healing because it does apply a dot when it goes off. So Just be careful. Try not to spread it, but not the end of the world if you spread it a little bit there. Otherwise, same stuff here. These orbs are still spawning. So, be spreading around, using CCs on them, getting rid of them. Another storm surge happened. And then at, what is that? I believe it's 25%. Yeah, 25% is the start of the next intermission. Or timer, either. On Heroic, this spawns 2 big adds. On normal, it's only 1. So on Heroic, you again want to just split into the same groups that you were previously in for the first intermission and just hit that Storm Fiend. And basically, these adds, you want the damage to be even again because they will enrage when the other one dies. And you're just dodging everything here. You get the Dragon Breaths on you. You got these orbs on you. You've got the actual... a bubble here, yeah. You've got the actual swirlies on the ground as well to avoid. And then occasionally these mobs will swap places. So this one will go over there. That one comes over here. And at the same time, they spawn these Stormlings. And these Stormlings will try and run to the opposite ad here. So they're going to run straight through the middle and they're going to group up here. And so when they get here, you want to use things like big AoE slows, CCs, lockdowns, and AoE them down before they're able to reach the Storm Fiend. Otherwise, they get powered up, right? So you're going to see, I think we actually do, yeah, no. You probably want to slow them in the middle, right? So because like if you slow them too early, they won't all group up in the middle too well. So boom, you can drop everything in the middle here because they always walk through the middle, AoE them down, and then finish off these Storm Fiends again. This guy's enraged now that the other one died a little early. So keep that in mind. This Storm Break does a big hit of damage as well. Boom. But it's not too scary. You prep for it. And then once that guy dies, you'll go to the last platform or your first platform again. So you just line up and you'll get knocked to the first platform. Boom. And then this one is, again, pretty similar to some of the other phases. A lot of returning abilities. The one big thing here is you're going to see the edges of the room fill with this lightning, and it's going to slowly come in. So you're going to have less and less space throughout the boss fight. You've still got the fulminating charges, so that's slow that you have to get out. You've still got the Tempest Wing, so then pushback that you have to run through. And then there's also going to be this new thing called the Magnetic Charge. It's going to debuff one player, and it's going to pull the raid to them when it blows up, basically. And so what we do here is we generally have the raid kind of stacked up, and then the one player pulls everyone there. Boom. They move out. They pull everyone. Just so, again, it does fall off damage. So one thing to be aware of is this breath attack, right? This first one especially is always around the same time as the pull-in. So if it targets the single player that's moved out, they need to make sure they dodge towards the raid so they don't pull the whole raid through this breath, right? That's bad. But most of the time it's going to target the raid stack. So generally you want to be stacked here as a raid. Outside of the one person with the pull. And again, same idea here. Freedom effects on them. Everyone else moves this way towards this side. And if someone else does get the debuff, it's not a big deal. They just go out with it. The tank debuff in this phase is different. Thunderous Blast, it's a frontal line here. This will do pulsing or a hit of damage to the raid based on the damage you took. So you want to use big mitigations here to prevent your raid from taking too much extra damage from that ability, as it is pretty scary if you like do it fully unmitigated. Meanwhile, if you do something like an immune, like an AMS or a full absorb or anything like that, it does like no damage, which you saw there to the raid, which is very, very good. And then from there, it's basically just a DPS race to kill the boss before. You can see here we're slowly running out of space. You're going to have less space to deal with the Tempest Wing, less space to deal with the actual fulminating charges, things like that. And you can see we did Lust in this phase as well, so recommend doing that. But there we have it, guys. That is my Vault of the Incarnates refresher. Hopefully this helps you and your group out. And if it did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like it, including an Abberus refresher coming next week, as well as more guide content coming in the War Within. Of course, I need to shout out my amazing Patreons for their ongoing support. Could not do this without you, so thank you. And I'll see everyone in the next video.